When I tell people I'm a geographer, the most common question I get in response is, do you know the capital of every country? But no, I don't know the capital of every country. But luckily for me, and maybe for a lot of you too, that's only a small portion of what geography is about anyway. Rather than this popular understanding of geography as knowing all the capitals or finding things on maps, in this course we'll go beyond that into the reasons behind where things are located. In this video, we will approach geography more broadly and provide a framework to engage with our world in a way that's deeper than memorizing facts about countries. We will cover 4 concepts that are important for both physical and cultural geography: space, place, scale, and mobility. And these will provide a language we can use to talk about where and why. Geographers like to say that we live in a spatial world, but what does that mean? Geographers are not usually talking about space as in outer space, although Earth does exist in outer space, and we'll talk about it in Module 2, but we're really talking about this sense of space on Earth. There are 2 main ways that geographers usually talk about space. One is absolute space, and the other is relative space. Absolute space refers to space as a sort of container in which organisms, like humans and other animals, and objects exist, and in which events occur. So absolute space is a sort of geometric way of thinking about the world. In my diagram here, we have absolute space as this circular area with some sort of object inside of it. In this way, space might be a classroom or an open field, or the tiny room that I'm recording this video in. Relative space, on the other hand, refers to the space between positions. So in this diagram, you can see the space between 2 objects. An obvious example is one's own personal space, right? We might keep a greater distance between ourselves and strangers than, say, ourselves and friends. Space is our main focus in geography, and we spend a lot of time thinking about spatial phenomena. In science, a phenomenon is an observable event or happening, and by observable, I mean we can collect information about it, also known as data. When we talk about spatial phenomena, we're thinking about spatial patterns and the processes underneath. A spatial pattern is just the way that organisms and objects are arranged in space. When geographers want to know why things are where they are and how they got there, they're investigating a spatial pattern. We do this by looking at spatial processes, which are the mechanisms or the ways that these patterns happen. To give an example from physical geography, where we're talking about the non-human world, like forests and mountains and rain, let's consider a spatial pattern from this photograph. We can see a valley between mountains filled with trees, which are a type of organism because they're alive. And a geographer might ask, why do trees tend to grow in mountain valleys rather than on top? That's a spatial pattern. So trees are growing in one area or space, the valley, and not in another area on the side of the mountain or on the top of the mountain. So then what spatial process or processes are creating this pattern? Well, trees might grow more easily in mountain valleys because that's where rain collects, or because there's shelter from the wind, or because animals drop seeds there. We can see these spatial processes come in many forms and can occur together as well. It could be any one of those reasons, or it could be multiple of them. Following from space, we can move on to place. A common way of defining place in geography is a location with meaning attached. We might think of a location as a point on the Earth's surface, something we can represent in raw coordinates, like we're doing geometry, and we'll learn more about coordinates in an upcoming video. But this has a general significance. We can say that it's north of the equator, that it's west of England, and it's probably in or around California. but it doesn't have a particular meaning unless you've memorized those coordinates. It isn't a place. Instead, it only becomes a place once we know that these are the coordinates to Skyline College, somewhere that one might go to learn or to work. This gives the location meaning, turning it into a place. When talking about places, we can also be more specific by considering the site and situation of that place. The site would be the physical features of the place. So this might be the location as coordinates, but this could also be some description about that place. So we could say that Skyline College is on a hill. On the other hand, the situation would be the place's relationship to other features surrounding it. So we could say that Skyline College overlooks the town of Pacifica, or that it's along the coast of the Pacific Ocean. Situation refers to other places. It gives context for the place. Our third concept is scale. Scale refers to the level of zoom at which spatial processes occur. We can arrange scales from small to large. So, for example, we could go from a single organism to an ecosystem, which includes organisms and their environment, to a landscape, to a region, a continent, and then the entire planet. Or they can also be arranged the other way around. The hierarchy, and in fact scales in general, are constructions. They're ideas that are useful to geographers to categorize spatial processes or experiences. And these examples are just one way to define scales. Throughout this course, we'll learn about other ways to zoom in and out when thinking geographically. Our last concept is mobility, which is a way to describe the capacity and ease of movement for organisms and objects. We can think of the flow of a river or the spread of seeds by the wind. Mobility is significant because it links all three of our concepts discussed so far: space, place, and scale. We can think of mobility as movement through space, like an animal moving through a field. So this focuses on physical movement within a given area. We can also think of mobility between places, which is maybe the most common understanding, as in moving from point A to point B, something that humans do a lot. And we can also think of mobility in terms of scale, which is maybe the most abstract, but it helps us understand how spatial processes are linked, from local to global or the other way around. Take, for example, a forest fire. A fire starts from a single spark at one location, one point on the earth. Pretty soon it spreads beyond that point. Given enough fuel, it can engulf a forest or landscape. And as plant matter combusts, it releases carbon into the air as smoke. Smoke's mobility allows it to travel far beyond the forest, carried by air currents. So what started as a point on the ground can become a regional problem, affecting people in places hundreds of miles away. So mobility thus provides this bridge between our concepts. Taken all together, we can use these ideas of space, place, scale, and mobility to think geographically, to investigate spatial patterns, to better understand the places we care about, and to notice the connections between organisms, including us humans, and the planet that we live on. In our next video, we'll build on space, place, scale, and mobility as we learn about the kinds of questions geographers ask and how we can then find answers using what's called the scientific method. Thanks for watching. See you next time.